This is Mrs. Wainwright's math class, chapters 6, 7, and 8, Pkt F, lesson 4, divide fractions. Today's learning target: by the end of the lesson, you should confidently be able to say, I can divide fractions and find a fully simplified quotient. Let's take a look at the notes for today's lesson. Notes: dividing fractions is like going fishing and filleting the fish. You keep the body to change into your dinner, and then you flip the tail back into the water, because you don't want to eat the fish tail. Yuck. So we say keep, change, flip. How do I remember that? I draw a fish. Keep the body, change, it looks like a nice X where the tail is, and flip the tail back into the ocean. Let's see how it's done. So here's example number 1. Springtime is here. Mrs. W is remulching her flower beds. She needs 1/8 of a ton of mulch for each flower bed. Home Depot delivered 3/4 of a ton today. How many flower beds can Mrs. Wainwright remulch? Well, first thing that I need to do is find the exact question that I'm being asked, and I am being asked the question, how many flower beds can she remulch today? So I don't know how many flower beds I can put that nice dark black mulch in. Let's see what I know. I know that I need 1/8 of a ton for each flower bed. I also know that Home Depot delivered 3/4 of a ton today. So my total, the total amount that I have of mulch is 3/4 of a ton. That's what Home Depot delivered. I know that for each flower bed, I am going to use 1/8 of a ton in each flower bed. Notice that it says each flower bed, 1/8 in each flower bed. Each means multiplication or division. So let's figure out which one it is. We know that Home Depot delivered 3/4 of a ton today. And we know that we're going to put 1/8 of a ton in each separate flower bed. So 1/8 in one, 1/8 in another, 1/8 in another. I have a total. I'm breaking it into smaller groups. That means division. 3/4 is my total, divided by 1/8, because each smaller group will use 1/8 of a ton. Let's move this to the next page and see how to solve a division problem with fractions. So I see that that is a division problem with fractions, and I know that every time I divide fractions, I'm thinking about going fishing. And when I go fishing and I catch a fish, I'm going to draw the fish right here. There's my nice little fish. Okay, and I know that I am going to keep the body to change it into my dinner. It's a little X right there, you see it on his tail, and I'm going to flip that tail back into the ocean because I certainly don't want to eat the tail for dinner. How does that relate to our division problem? Well, I am going to keep the body, change the division to multiplication, and flip the tail into the ocean. So if I take a look at my fractions for that, I keep the first fraction, which is 3/4. I change the division into a multiplication sign, and then I flip my next fraction. So instead of 1/8, 1 on the top, 8 on the bottom, I will flip it around and have 8 on the top, 1 on the bottom. So now I have the problem 3/4 times 8/1. Well, I know how to multiply fractions. So remember, when I multiply fractions, I'm going to use the X11 strategy. For that X11 strategy, I'm going to go with the orange part of my X first, which is my 8 and my 4. So I'm going to find the GCF of both 8 and 4. I should label it GCF, so if I look back at my work, I know what I did. Factors of 8 are 1 and 8, 2 and 4, and that's it. Factors of 4 are 1 and 4, 2 and 2, so I'm done. There's no 8 down there, but there is a 4. So the GCF of 8 and 4 is 4. So I'll divide both of these by 4. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Now I'm going to do the green portion of my X11 strategy, which is my 3 and 1. And when there's a 1, I'm done. So I'm done with the green portion. Next I will do the brown portion of my 11 strategy, which is a 3 and a 1 right over here. When there's a 1, I'm done. So I'm done with the brown portion. Finally, I will do the purple portion of my X11 strategy, which are these numbers right here, which now is a 2 and 1. Again, when there's a 1, I'm done. So my problem is done. I'm ready to rewrite the problem and multiply. So I have 3/1 times 2/1. Remember, we multiply numerator times numerator. 3 times 2 is 6. Denominator times denominator. 1 times 1 is 1. 6 over 1 is the same thing as 6. So 3/4 divided by 1/8 equals 6. What does that mean? Well, that means how many flower beds can I remulch today? I can remulch 6 flower beds. So I started off with 3/4 of a ton of mulch. I put 1/8 of a ton in each garden. I was able to remulch 6 flower beds. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 1 right now. Example 2. Courtney has 3/8 of a yard of ribbon. She cuts the ribbon into pieces that are 2/6 yard each. How many of these pieces of ribbon does Courtney have? The question is, how many pieces of the ribbon does Courtney have? Well, let's see what I know. I know that Courtney has 3/8 of a yard of ribbon. This is what she has already. I also know that she's going to cut the ribbon into pieces that are 2/6 of a yard each. So the total ribbon that she has is her 3/8 of a yard. That's her total amount of ribbon. I'm going to write that down right here. That's my total, 3/8. I'm going to cut it into equal pieces that are each 2/6 of a yard. When I have a total, I'm dividing it into small equal sections. I make this a division problem. And we know she's cutting it into 2/6 of a yard pieces. So I have the division problem 3/8 divided by 2/6. Okay, let's rewrite that on the next page and finish it up. This is a division problem with fractions. I know that is going to mean I am going fishing. So I draw my fish, and remember, my fish reminds me of the strategy: keep the body, change it into the dinner, and flip the tail back into the ocean, because we don't want to eat that. So it's keep, change, flip. What am I keeping? 3/8. What am I changing? Division to multiplication. What am I flipping? Instead of saying 2/6, I will flip that around and say 6/2. So my new multiplication problem is 3/8 times 6/2. And when I multiply fractions, I follow my x11 strategy. So let's go ahead and look at the first part of the x, and you can do any side of the x first. I'm going to go this way for right now. I have 3 and 2. That's the part of my x I'm looking at. I don't see a 1, but that is counting order or backwards counting order. 3, 2, 2, 3. That's back counting order. So that's done. Now I'm going to go ahead and look at the orange portion of my x, which is the 6 and the 8. So let's go ahead and find the GCF for 6 and 8. So GCF of 6 and 8, factors of 6 are 1 and 6, 2 and 3, and that's it. I am done. Factors of 8 are 1 and 8, 2 and 4, 3 doesn't work, 4, I am done. There's no 6, there's no 3, but there is a 2, so the GCF of 6 and 8 is 2. I will divide both of them by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So I finished the orange portion of my x. Now I need to move to the brown portion of my 11, which is right over here, and I see 3, 4. That's counting order. It's done. I move to the purple portion of my 11, which is this side right here. I see 3, 2. Which is counting backwards, right? 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, or in opposite order, 2, 3. So that is counting order. I am done. I am ready to rewrite my fractions and multiply. Again, we have 3/4 times 3/2. Numerator times numerator. 3 times 3 is 9. Denominator times denominator. 4 times 2 is 8. Look at 9/8, and is that a proper fraction? Will it work in a chicken fight? No way. Cross out the 9, boom, drop it into that division box pool, and now I'm ready to divide. 8 goes into 9 one time. 1 times 8 is 8. 9 minus 8 is 1. 1 is less than 8. There's nothing to bring down. Write that as remainder. I have 1 and 1/8. But let's go back to our original problem. The question says, how many of these pieces of ribbon does Courtney have? Courtney has 1 1/8 pieces of ribbon. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 2 right now. Example 3, 15/21 divided by 10/7. Oh, I see a division problem with fractions. That reminds me, I'm going fishing. Let's draw my fish, and that is going to be a keep, change, flip strategy. Keep, change, flip. 15/21 is what I'm keeping. Change my division to multiplication. Flip, instead of 10/7, I will have 7/10. And now we're ready to go ahead and solve. So again, to multiply fractions, I use the x11 strategy. Let's look at the orange portion of the x first, which is the 7 and the 21. I'm going to go ahead and find the GCF of 7 and 21. Okay, so the GCF of 7 and 21. Factors of 7 are 1 and 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nope, I'm done. Factors of 21 are 1 and 21. 3 times 7 equals 21, and I'm done. I do see a 7 in both places, so my GCF of 7 and 21 is 7. I will divide them both by that GCF. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 21 divided by 7 is 3. Now I'm going to look at the green portion of my x. Oops, that's not green, Mrs. Wainwright. Which is right there, and I have 15 and 10. So I'll continue with my GCF for 15 and 10. Factors of 15 are 1 and 15. 2 doesn't work, 3 does. 3 times 5 is 15. 4 doesn't work, 5 does. I'm done. Factors of 10 are 1 and 10. It's an even number, so 2 and 5. No 3, no 4, 5. I'm done. There's no 15, so I'm going to cross it out. There is a 5. GCF of 15 and 10 is 5. So I'm going to say 15 divided by 5 and 10 divided by 5. Okay, let's solve that. 15 divided by 5 is 3. 10 divided by 5 is 2. So right over here, I'm going to rewrite my new fraction since I ran out of room underneath it. And that is going to be, oh, I'm just realizing I made a mistake. Do you see my mistake? I can't use this arrow yet because I've done the X strategy, but what strategy did I forget? That's right, the 11 strategy. I need to look at this side. I have 3 and 3. Oh, well, I can divide both 3 and 3 by 3. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. 3 divided by 3 equals 1, and 3 divided by 3 equals 1. So I did the brown portion of my 11 strategy. Now I need to do the purple portion of my 11 strategy. 1 and 2. Oh, when there's a 1, I'm done, so that is fully reduced. Now I can go ahead and write my problem right over here since I ran out of room underneath it. So I have 1 over 1 times 1 over 2. I say numerator times numerator, 1 times 1 is 1. Denominator times denominator, 1 times 2 is 2. So I have to ask the question, is that a proper fraction? Will it work in a chicken fight? And yes, it will. So that will be my final answer. 15/21 divided by 10/7 equals 1/2. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 3 right now. So let's review. Dividing fractions is like going fishing and filleting the fish. You keep the body to change into your dinner, and then you flip the tail back into the water because you don't want to eat the fish tail. Yuck. So when we divide fractions, we say keep, change, flip. We draw a little fish. K goes in the body because that's what we're keeping. Change, which is the multiplication sign between the body and the tail, and flip because we flipped that tail away. So when I see a division problem with fractions, I always like to draw my little fish, K in the body, the X for the change right over the tail, and the F in the tail since I'm flipping the tail. I usually take those letters because it takes 2 seconds and write them right above my fractions as well. So what does keep mean? It means I keep the first fraction exactly as is. What does change mean? I'm changing division to multiplication. And what does flip mean? I'm flipping the fraction around. Instead of 1 over 8, it will be 8 over 1. Then we go ahead and multiply as usual. Remember, when we multiply, we use the x11 strategy to cross-cancel. When we've done the x and the 11, we've fully cross-canceled, we rewrite our fraction so that we have a nice clean problem, and then we go ahead and solve numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. We finally have to ask ourselves the question, is this a proper fraction? Will it work in a chicken fight? Any number over 1 is itself, but again, I could have dropped this 6 into the division box, and 1 would have gone into 6 times, because 6 over 1 is not a proper fraction. So in this problem, the final answer was 6. Hopefully by now you can confidently say, I can divide fractions and find a fully simplified quotient. We will continue practicing in class. If you have any questions or difficulty, please see a teacher. We will help you. Good luck with the lesson.